Michael, thank you for coming onto the show. It's really, really great to have you here and to speak to me. Um, I just wondered if, for the listeners out there, would you mind giving us an idea about what you do at the moment, just so that the listeners have a context of the conversation that we're about to have?
Yeah, sure. So, first and foremost, thank you very much for allowing me to be here on the podcast. I think it's going to be great. A bit about myself. So, my name is Michael Lee. I'm the founder of a charity called Fundraise for Vietnam. It's been up and running for around 7, 8 years, and we can dive deeper on that at a later stage. I'm a mindset coach, so I help people to reach their goals, to change the narrative. A lot of this has been around their limiting beliefs. Again, we can talk about that later. And I am a father as well to a wonderful daughter. She's a 5-year-old. Yeah, so that's me in a nutshell.
Fantastic. And the first question I really, really want to get to know, to have you answer is, when was that pivotal moment in your life where you decided you want to become a mindset coach? When was that moment? Do you still remember?
Oh, yes. But it's been built up over I say for the last 7 years to that point, because I sat down for the 2-day free course for coaching. I think it was 2017 or so. But what led me there was to take a step backwards, more around the charity. But we can talk about that later. So it was more around sitting down in this 2-day free course. Like, what? So I sat there and I thought to myself, what is coaching? What is this? Because at that time I was doing public speaking already. And to sit in there, and I was blown away for the 2 days. And it was more around a lot of the things that I'll say it's more around the values and beliefs that we have, the fact that we've been wired in a certain way and that we can rewire it. And I think for me that is fascinating, because sometimes what we like to call is a fixed mindset, that this is how it is, things will never change, versus someone who has a growth mindset. And to be in a position as a coach, as a mindset coach, to sit there and to say, okay, tell me what limiting beliefs you have, meaning what stories are you telling yourself that you can't do it. I can't get rich. I can't start a business. I can't be attractive. I can't be confident. All those kind of things. But if we change the narrative on that, and ask the right questions and pull out the answers from that particular individual, then all of a sudden their narrative, their goals, the way they see life completely changes. And from that moment when I sat down a couple of years ago, when it comes to that course, it's been a real game changer. It's taken me years to qualify. It's taken me, working with different clients to really understand that this is what I want to be, a mindset coach. Yeah, so that's how I come. But again, there's a build up to how I came that, because I've never been this person that when I was growing up, this mindset person. I had a fixed mindset. Let's be honest, right? I had a fixed mindset. I always felt that I was right. These are my friends. Everything they say is right, because this is my tribe. And it's when the more you mature, the more you grow up, the more you network, the more you meet different people, then if you're open to new ideas, that's when you realize, hang on a second, what I had learned in the past is not necessarily true. What I've learned in the past doesn't necessarily work for me. Maybe it worked for me in the past, but it doesn't serve me now. So those have been interesting insights, and to be able to sit down and reflect has definitely changed the way I look at things. So as long as you are open to these things, then it helps me as a coach working with a client, for example, for you to change. If you have a fixed mindset as a client, it's not going to work, because you just see life one way. But again, it's a coach's job to help you change the way that you look at life itself.
Fantastic. There's so many things I want to explore with you from what you just said.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
at the beginning, you said that we're wired to think in certain ways. We're wired to think we can't do this. We can't become rich. We can't think that we're attractive. Where do you think this pressure comes from? This sort of constraint that we have on ourselves? Is it society that gives us these constraints? Where do you think this comes from?
So one of them is society. One of them is society. Two of them is your friends and family, or your proximity. But I'll say most of it would be your parents or whoever raised
Right.
you. And you know, I'm not sure if you know, but for the first 7-8 years, most of it, the beliefs that you have, is driven by your parents or person that's caring for you, because they tell you what's right, what's wrong, what can you do, what can't you do. And we have that, and then we go into the system, what we call the school, for example, and they also build up these beliefs that we have. We hear stories about children that can be very creative, but when you go to school, not saying all schools, but most schools, they tell you how to think a certain way. There's only one answer, for example. So now you have this kind of mental model in your head that this is the way that I should think, but it's been developed over time without you realizing it. So that when you're mature, when you become an adult, and you make decisions, these decisions are based on your experiences or based on your beliefs, which is not necessarily mean that it's the right way to do things. And if we talk about the example of, let's say, my parents, let's get a bit personal here, and they always say that, you know, you have to be very hardworking to make money, for example. And I've put my head down, got into myself an education, degree, master, said, yes, that's right. Let's do this, right? And then got to my first job, and I think I was paid, how much I paid 12 years ago? £12,000 a year, right? And it was a office manager for a small company, £12,000. And you compare that, and I said to myself, hang on a second, £12,000, this doesn't make sense. I'm working really hard for the first year. It doesn't make sense, right? And I looked at my friend who just started a business, and she's raking in thousands of pounds a year, and she didn't even go to school. And I said to myself, this doesn't even make sense. What is going on? So sometimes we can be very, we can say to ourselves that actually, that if we just persevere, put our head down, things will work out. This 9 to 5, for example, I go from 12,000, 24, 36, blah, blah, blah. But there's other people right now, even you look at it, let's say fast forward 10 years from now, you see people go on YouTube. It's not hard work. People can stream on Twitch, for example, and make money, thousands of pounds. So the idea of you have to put a lot of graft in, you have to put all the hard work in, that's just a belief. Even when you look at investors, I'm not a financial advisor. Some people have been in crypto and being a millionaire, not overnight, but over maybe a couple of months or a year, because they just studied patterns, for example. And for me, that is very interesting. So, and even when we say hard work, it will make you succeed, you can see the hardest working people are not the people at the top. The hardest working people are probably the ones at the bottom. And they are grafting on a daily basis. So they could graft on a daily basis. They're breaking their back every single time. But it's the guys at the top, for example, that are making those decisions and being very clever on how to utilize their time. So it's just the idea of looking at it, of a typical belief.
Yes. It reminds me of that cliche, you know, work smarter, not harder. Is that something you also incorporate into your own professional life as well?
Yeah. So it's definitely works, work smarter, not harder. To some degree, I think you have to understand the process first. Once you understand it, once you put the graft in, and then you can say, okay, how do I become more, how do I outsource this, or how do I become more clever at approaching this? Am I allocating all my time in the right space, for example, or can this be outsourced to a virtual assistant? So that's me being smart. Am I just 2 hours or 3 hours of spending on admin? Is this really move the needle? Am I really serving the clients? Can I just outsource it? It's those questions that you have to ask yourself. But sometimes we get caught up that by being busy, we're being productive. It's not necessarily true. We just have to say, okay, we have to look at our day and what we're doing and how we're allocating that time, and then saying, okay, what have I done in this time? And sometimes you hear people say, where has the day gone by? I haven't done anything. And then the next day they do the exact same thing. And then the following week. So you have to, like I say to my wife and my friends, that once you respect time, it's a whole different ballgame. And I don't mean the way where you have to look at your calendar and say, I need to fill in every single box and every hour I must be doing something, back-to-back meeting. It's not that. It's just more around what are you spending your time on, right? And is it serving you? So sometimes you can have an hour break, 2 hour break if you need to, and that's more reflecting. But as long as you know where it's going, and you can, at the end of the day, you can say, okay, that's been a productive day, then that for me is respecting time. Once you start disrespecting time, meaning that you don't have no goals and you're watching Netflix all day, you're on Instagram mindlessly scrolling, looking for the right content, then it's not going to work for you.
Mm. I'm so glad you mentioned working towards a goal. This is something I've been managing, at least two projects at the same time. There's podcasts and a magazine project as well. And I totally agree that having a goal in your mind is very good when you want to work towards that goal. So as you just said, working harder without a goal doesn't necessarily mean it's productivity. You could be saying, or you could be doing stuff that doesn't really help at all towards reaching that goal. So I just want to ask, is it better to have sort of not a vague goal, but a flexible goal? Or is it better to have a very fixed goal that's sort of immune to change, and then you work towards that? Which one is better? Flexible or fixed goal?
100% flexible. There is no such thing in my mind as a fixed goal, because things change. For example, when you were a kid, what was your goal in life? Right?
Is that a rhetorical question?
No. I'm asking you. I'm asking you. Right? I'm asking you.
When I was a kid.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I wanted to be a concert pianist.
so there you go. Okay. And what about now? Has it changed, or is it still the same?
It's changed.
Okay. So there's a good example of it, right? So when I was young, I said to myself, I'm going to be, I'm going to own an ice cream van, and I'm going to drive around and give free ice cream, all that kind of stuff. Of course, that doesn't make sense in this day and age. But now I'm at a stage where, in the past, I've said to myself, I want to be a director. Now it's more around, fast forward 10 years, it's no longer that. It's been this amazing mindset coach, for example, that I can travel around the world and meet people face to face. This is my goal. But in 10 years' time, that could change. For me at the moment, it's crystal clear what I want. But this thing has changed. And just an example, I've worked with clients where they came to me and said, this is my goal. By the end of it, it's completely changed. And it's not so much about them hitting a goal based on how you define success for me. It's more about that client or individual experiencing that journey. For me, I would say you'd rather find out this is not your goal earlier rather than later. So that's the beauty behind it, of you just going ahead. The beauty behind the goal, or the way the goal works, is where people get lost of now is they say, I want to do X, Y, Z by X, Y, Z, and that's fine, right? And the next year they said, oh, it's been a busy year, I still want to do X, Y, Z, but there's no time frame. And there's no time frame, it's never ever going to happen. And people forget that. So once you have that time frame in place, or even better, you have an accountability partner and say, hey, this is what I'm committing to, things will change. And all of a sudden you'll say to yourself that actually I only got 12 months, 6 months, 3 months. Then you break down, what's the game plan? This is where you want to go. Where do you want to be in 1 week or 1 month's time? And how do you know you're progressing towards it? As opposed to, it's next year, I haven't done much, and let me start again, reset it to next year. And before you know it, you're 40, 60, whatever. And then you say, oh, it wasn't that important. It's just a goal. Is that nice to have goal, or is it a must have? And that could be the difference. And because sometimes we say that we want this goal of, I'm making this up. I want to own a big company. I want to have this massive company. I want to have 100 people. What's the reason behind it? It sounds good. I want a validation from people to say, no, I'm this big person. Okay, then we ask more questions around it. What's the bigger goal? Because sometimes that's the goal, but it's another goal behind it, and that's financial freedom. And there's financial
Right.
freedom, also as time freedom as well, which I call it. But also there's another, could be another one, which is more around, I just want to spend time with my family and not think about money ever again. But
Mm,
that's the is. And that's business of hiring 10 people or 100 people is just a way of them to be able to do that. So
right.
this goals hidden behind goals that people are not aware of.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Right. Okay. So okay. So people. So these are. So having the company of 100 people is one goal, but that's a super. Would you say like a superficial goal? And then underneath,
Yeah,
there's a deeper reason for trying
absolutely.
to obtain that goal.
Absolutely. And there's a goals that have values that is tied to it. And that's
Right.
what people we need to work towards. Because sometimes you have a conversation with your friends and you can have, you're in the pub and they say, I want to have a business. I wanted to do this. And it's very high level kind of thing. But no one really asks these questions to find out what's the reason behind it. And it's just the way we are. But once you understand it, and once you know that this is the real reason why I want to do it, all of a sudden you will find that motivation and inspiration to do it, as opposed to it's a nice to have. When you start thinking, hang on a second, this business will actually give me X, Y, Z, which is in line with my values. Okay, this makes sense. Okay, I need to start, and that's what we do as coaches.
Hmm. So people should sort of inwardly question their goals. Like, why do I really want this? And really be honest with yourself about why you want this.
Absolutely. So if you can, ask yourself, what's the reason why you want it? Just ask. I think there's I think Toyota started it off first, where they asked themselves why 5 times. I don't know if you know this concept, but they asked themselves why 5 times, and then you get to the root problem of it.
Yes, yes, yeah.
That's the root cause. Yeah, it could also be the same thing when you talk about goals. What's the reason behind this? Why do I want this? Why do I want this? Ask yourself 5 times, and you probably get to the real reason on why you're going down this route in the first place. Because sometimes we do things because we think that it's the right thing to do, that will fit in, that people will respect us, that will mean that we'll have a fancy house. But truth be told, if you have a house that's 3 bedroom, semi-detached, and the next one you want to get is a detached house, it may feel good for the first 10 minutes you walk in, but it's still a house. It doesn't really change anything unless you have to be crystal clear. My one is, when I look at houses, the reason why I want to buy another house is a bigger house. It's not so much of it's more space, but I want my parents to move in with me, because I want to be in a position, as you know, as we are Asians, we want to look after our parents and not to put them, in a care home or anything like that. So that for me is a massive driver now to work extra hard, as opposed to it's nice to have. I don't want my parents to live with me now because it might be too cramped. And yes, they can live here, but I want them to give that space. So it's having that clarity on reason having a house. Because when we say it's nice to have, have extra room, or maybe it's a playroom or or a office, those are nice to have. That's not going to move the needle.
So being aware of these deeper motivations and reasonings can it drive us more to achieve those goals,
Yes,
increase the
definitely. So
possibility.
definitely. So these ones, I would say, can once you find out, it's motivating. But the word motivate. I don't use it that much because I'm not a big fan of that word. Because motivation only works for a day or 2 days. I used to tell people that I'm a motivational speaker, and now I've moved away from it because you know why? Because you go on stage, right? And then you tell your story or you change the narrative, and it works for a day or 2 days. And then people will message you, write testimonials. Oh my God, Michael, I'm inspired, right? But then they go back to the way that they normally operate on a daily, of course, on a daily basis, and you're not there to talk to them, right? So that motivation is lost unless there's another motivator goes in. The other one thing that I like to use, my favorite word right now, is discipline. To do things, to be disciplined. This is my goal. I'm disciplined, even though I have no motivation whatsoever. I'm still going to get myself out of bed. I'm still going to put the work in, right? And this what I'm putting in today will help me get me closer to that place. But if you're waiting for motivation, it's going to be tough. Yes, yes, you can say motivation could find you. For example, if you're running and motivation just finds you because you're running now and you feel good about yourself. But on a daily basis, that gets really hard.
Yes.
You can have willpower. Willpower works quicker, right? So you have motivation. After that, you have willpower. After that, you have to find discipline. Yeah, and there are talks. There's a book which I've come across. What's it called? I can't remember what it's called, but it's about habits, um, atomic habits. Atomic Habits, and that book is absolutely amazing on how to create habits as well. Of course, it's the name itself, but how to do things that you don't like, and those things, they don't talk about goals too much, but you can tie it in together. So it's absolutely amazing book that I would recommend. And
Yes.
This is not a paid sponsor.
So you're saying that there's three levels to like productivity. There's at the top, which is quite thin. Let's just say a thin layer is motivation, and you have second is willpower, which is a bit thicker. Then the bottom is discipline. So from what I heard from you is, let me get this straight. So discipline is the ability to be productive, regardless of whether you feel like it or not. Mm-hmm. Have I summarized that correctly?
Yeah, to keep going at it, regardless of how you feel, that you pick yourself up. So running is a good example, because I know you've been running as well, and it's being committed to that. And there's times where, have you ever felt that you wake up and you feel good about yourself? Yeah, fancy 5K today, 10K is doable. And then it rains or something, or your legs are heavy, but you scheduled it in a run, and you can easily talk yourself out of it. It's very easy to say to yourself, you know what, I think I deserve a rest, or let me wait for a couple of hours and then I can go out there, right? And then a couple of hours come and you're like, I don't really fancy it anymore. Let me do it tomorrow. And once you've missed you missed that run, and then it's very easy for you to say, let me skip another run. It's okay. I can wait till another week. So the idea of discipline is that regardless of the weather, if it rains, there's thunderstorms, you're still going to go out there regardless, because how you feel afterwards is going to be absolutely amazing. And this is what I call a competitive advantage. So for me, I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, right? And I wake up early and I do my work. And then when I finish, sometimes I go for a run. And when I finish my run, I come home and I say to myself, there's not many people out right now that are up. I have a competitive advantage, and that sets me up for the day. And every time I sleep in, in the past, I slept in and I would say to myself, I don't feel that good. I don't feel that good. And that's where where you lack self-discipline. So to have that discipline in place, regardless of how you feel, is absolutely a game changer. But you can also make discipline easy for yourself. For example, you could, if you're going for a run in the morning, put your trainers out there, put your tracksuit bottom, all that kind of stuff ready, so that when you wake up, it's there, and then you're off you go. So those are, I would say, the big game changer for me. Even having an accountability partner as part of, which works with discipline as well, that would be good. It could be yourself. It could be have post-it notes. It could be actually have an accountability partner that checks in on you. But sometimes people won't check in on you, even though you ask them to. So you have to check in on yourself. So that's really key.
Fantastic. What do you think makes a good mindset coach? What successful trait what traits or characteristics would set you up to be a good mindset coach?
I would say the first one, the easy one is that comes to mind is you have to have a growth mindset, meaning open mindset, being able to, that's number one. The second one I would say is you need to be a good listener. Because it's not you, you're not in the driving seat, it's the client. And it's sometimes very easy for us to jump in and say, I've been there before. But the moment you do that, you're no longer being a coach, you're being a mentor or a consultant. And it's also being in a position when you're listening in that you can communicate back what not has been said, which is a hard skill. So that could be based on body language, or you're picking up, or another one is some words that they're saying, or could be some words they're saying that could repeatedly say, or it could be there's some limiting beliefs. that can come up for you to pick that up. So it's the having that really active listening skills. And I would say this is a big game changer for me, because I thought I was being a good coach in the past, but it's nowhere to where I am now, to pick it up. So I think those two is super key, having that growth mindset, being able to listen and asking powerful questions. And sometimes we get caught up by what a powerful question means. Sometimes we feel that is there a structure? There is no structure to coaching to some degree in terms of the questions. There's not 10 questions for each client. There's probably thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, that you could do yourself. So it's just being open to that person. So
Fantastic.
that helps.
Yeah, I think I was thinking about this the other day. I think one of our similarities with our jobs is we both need to ask questions to find out something, and we need to be good at asking those questions.
Absolutely.
So, and I just want to ask you, when you ask your client questions, do you already have a sort of a structure of what you're going to ask them in the long run, or do you just really listen to what they say at that particular moment and let that moment guide you to what direction you have that they need?
It's the latter. So I don't have a set of questions. I have a coaching model that I use,
Right.
to help me kind of navigate. But I'll generally let the conversation flow. When I first started, I had a set questions, and it felt like I was kind of shoehorning those questions even though when it didn't make sense, for example, or you're hoping that this would lead to this question. So I let it flow, so it feels more like a conversation than anything else. So that's the way that I would approach it. But everyone's different. Yeah.
For sure. I like that you mentioned powerful questions. You know, I as like a training journalist for the past year, I've been sort of ruminating on this idea of what makes a good question, a powerful question. And the closest I've come to is that it's a question that makes the receiver think of stuff that they don't even think about.
Absolutely.
That must be the same for
Absolutely. And you would know when you've hit a powerful question when the client or is silent, because normally you would have the clients come in, or you say, for example, you're on a podcast, you hear a powerful question where, because normally when you have a client, they've trained themselves a certain way to respond in a certain way, and these are the questions, these are the answers that I'm going to deliver on a regular basis. But there might be questions that you ask them, powerful question, they've got, hang on a second, I've never thought about that, let me take a second to think about that. And those are where what we call a aha moment, where you think, oh my god, I didn't think of that. Now when you hear that, my perspective is going to change because you've asked me that.
Yeah. And I've always been wondering, how could we, as practitioners of asking questions, how can we do more of that? Is it just more open-mindedness combined with very, very, very acute listening, or
Definitely,
is it just inspiration that hits us that we ask that question? Where did it come from?
It's been, like you said, the listening has to be there. You have to listen what's being said and what's not being said, and having that growth mindset and not being afraid to challenge that person, because a lot of the questions that have been being asked to the clients or that particular individual, they've heard it all the time. But you have to keep them on their toes, or keep on the toes to a question that will say, hang on a second, nobody's ever asked me that, because they never dared me to, not in a rude way, anything like that, but to say, let me, if in order for you, for me, when I do coaching, in order for you to grow, I need to ask you questions that's not going to make you feel comfortable. And that's where growth is. Because one of my talks I've done in the past is all about comfort zone. If you're always operating in the comfort zone, nothing ever grows there. But once you step outside your comfort zone, of course it's uncomfortable, but that's where people grow every single time. And that's where the aha moments are.
Have you ever had a figure like that growing up? Because I know I had a few that I would trust in dearly, people who are not afraid to tell me the truth about what I needed to know. And these are friends I still have very dear to my life. And whenever I'm in trouble, I will ask them just to have sort of a clarification to put me back on track.
Yes.
Have you ever had people like that in your life growing up?
Yeah, so I have people like that. So there, it's I think it's a fine line when you have people that will call you out and want to see you do well,
Yeah.
and there's other people that are negative, and then we'll see everything in a bad light. And so you have to be very careful of what it is, because sometimes you have someone negative that says, "Oh, Anthony or Michael, I don't think you should do that because this is what's going to happen to you, X, Y, Z." And then all of a sudden you say, "You know what? You're right, actually." And then that takes you away from where you need to go. And then there are people that will say, "I'll be honest with you. This is working. This is not working." And sometimes that's what you need to hear. And sometimes you have to look at the background, to do a little background check, like who is this person? Are they credible?
Yeah.
Where are they now? Right? Or are they just on the streets every single time, or just on a low paid job? Not stuck down anyone, but you know what I mean, like it's on a low paid job for
Yes.
tons of years or something like that. That's probably a bad example. But you have to check their credibility. Are they in a position to give you advice that you could take to help you grow? If not, what I tend to do is to go to networking events, go on Facebook, for example, and speak to people that are think like you. Because when you're in that room, yes, there are people who are thinking like you, but you're bound to meet someone that's has years experience, more than you, or done something more than you, or whatever it is. And they could tell you the truth and say, "Hang on a second, I've done this in the past," like a mentor to some degree. And that for me is more valuable because they've been there, done that. And a
Yes.
typical example there would be when I first started speaking, I said I want to do public speaking. And what I've done is I took my mobile phone, recorded myself. It was outside snowing, and every time someone went past, I took the phone down and then waited to go away and then put the phone back up and the recorders. It was so awkward, right? So now I posted on Instagram trying to be someone else that I'm not. Posted it and people go, "Oh my God, this is amazing. This message is amazing." And there's messages from it's always your close ones, right? It's my close friends and my cousins that would message my brother and who come to me and they would say, "Did you know that XYZ said that he saw your video and he thinks you're crazy?" In a bad way. He thinks you're
Right.
crazy. Like, why is Michael doing that? Is Michael embarrassed himself? All this kind of stuff. And then it's very easy for you to say, "Hang on a second, is he or she right that this is embarrassing? Or should I hear from other people that are speakers?" And then I went to a speaking course, and then they said to me, "Yeah, you're doing everything right. Keep pushing yourself out there." And these became my mentors, and that allowed me to speak at different events. And of course, I become a TEDx speaker. But had I listened to my cousin, who doesn't know anything about it, then I would never be in the position that I'm in now, because because it's so easy for us to cave in, because this is how our brain works, right? We have this caveman brain where it's there to protect us at every single time. And that caveman brain keeps you in that comfort zone, doesn't allow you to grow. So when you do something, when you push yourself out, it says, "No, no, 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 I'm here to protect you. Don't embarrass yourself. There's lots of fears. Don't do that." But that's how people become successful. That's why there's not so many successful people and so many people that are operating very safe. Like you see it with their 9 to 5, for example, or doing something where they're doing their job for a very long time and don't want to move to another company because who knows what that might be like. So it's that.
I just wanted to just bring it slightly back to what you said before, was the keyword competitive advantage. And
Oh yeah.
for this next question, do you think it's a competitive advantage for a mindset coach to have gone through hell and back, to suffer a lot in their own life to be a successful mind coach to someone? Or do you think it's not necessary to have that experience, but it's a competitive advantage if you know what it feels like to be at rock bottom? Do you think what's your opinion
I,
on that?
I would say it's definitely a competitive advantage to hit rock bottom and then come back up, because you've experienced it. You can relate to people. You know what people is going through, and people want to work with you. I think it's very hard.
Right.
Let's say here's an example, right? Of when we talk about coaches out there. If
Mhm.
if I if I have, I don't know, let's make this up. If I wanted to make 7-figure for my business, for example, right? Let's say I don't know, I own an IT company and I wanted to make a seven figure business.
Mhm.
Who do I go to? Who do I go to here? Do I go to a business coach, or do I go to a relationship coach? A business coach is probably someone who's been there, done that. Yes, it could be a mentor, it could be a coach. Relationship coach might not relate to that, but yes, that person can help me. But I'd rather personally work with someone that I can that knows that when I talk, they're not second guessing. They say, I know what you're talking about, and then be able to ask those powerful questions because they've experienced it. So I think experiencing those rock bottom moments it definitely helps for me, or anyone who not necessarily hit rock bottom, or just have that experience in that niche that they're in. That helps.
Yes. So they're more informed to ask more intelligent questions towards
Absolutely.
helping your business. Yeah. Would
Absolutely.
would the idea of, say, let's take a business that makes 7 figures. Would you rather have advice from a business who never had a bad day in their life, or would you rather have a business that been through hell but still made it? Which one would you rather have?
Been through hell.
Been through hell rather.
Absolutely. Been through hell. I've been through hell and made it, because they know what to do and what's not to do, and they can give me examples, for example, or could ask me questions to see to say that these are some blind spots that I may have missed, because I can go in there and say, this is my plan for my
Mm.
for my 7-figure, and they can identify those blind spots and ask me. Whereas someone who, I mean, technically every business should have a rocky moment, but let's say hypothetically there is this company who's been on the up throughout, there's no bad moment whatsoever. You can't really take advice from that person to some degree, because that's just it's not real, it's not the truth. But if that was the case, then absolutely the preference would be someone who's been there, done that. Just calling out the blind spots.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's move swiftly on. From a mind coach's perspective, what does having an identity mean for someone?
Uh,
Identity.
Identity. I mean, identity is just who you are. Your beliefs, your values, the way that you see yourself. That's the identity. And then your question was more around, as a mindset coach, what does identity mean to me? Is that the
Yes,
question?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So as a mindset coach, what does it mean to me? Yeah, I think it's those three things: the beliefs, values, how we see ourselves, and the way I see myself now. It's more around helping people to become the better version of themselves, and also allowing people to find out what their true identity is. That as a coach, and that's my job. I don't know. I might not be able to quote this correctly, but it's a story you might be familiar with, and it's more around that when you die, you meet the person that you could have become. I'm not sure if you heard that before.
I haven't actually, no.
Okay, so and that for me scares me. So let's say that's let's say that I'm okay. I'm a mindset coach now, and I keep going at this. But there have been signs as life goes by, signs that I've missed, because I said this is who I am, and so on and so forth. Right? People talk to me about another opportunity, and then lo and behold, I die, and I see myself. But this person could have become, which could be I'm making this up. It could be, I don't know, an 8-figure, I don't know, this person that brings in 8 figures or 9-figure, and he's set up charities all around the world. But I was so fixated on playing it small, and this is who I am. So the identity for myself is more around, if you have this right person, or you have the right, not necessarily the coach, but you have the right people around you, then they could nurture you and allow you to become the person that you need to become. And that for me is key. And it's all about goal setting as well. Again, goals change every single time. But like I said to you before, you want to if it's the wrong goal, you'd rather find out now rather than later, so that you can go in a different direction, or the right path. for example. The other thing that I tend to ask myself is, which is different to that story, is that once I'm on my deathbed, I want to be in a position where I can say to myself that I have no regrets whatsoever, that I've given life everything, and this is who I am. I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, I might meet the other person, which is who I could have become. And that for me bugs me every single time. Because sometimes you have to say to yourself, is this the path that I need to go on?
Yes.
But again, you rather find out now rather than later. There's going to be mistakes along the way. And this is normal. But if you don't move, if you don't change, if you not say to yourself, I'm going to play it safe. Imagine this, right? Let's say, I don't know, I always say 95 for some reason. You have a 95, right? And I don't have anything against 95, but they're just so easy to pick on. All right. If you have a 95, right? And yeah, if you have a 95, but the person that you could have become would have been, I don't know, this entrepreneur, for example, that would bug you big time. This serial entrepreneur, you could have been on Dragon's Den, for example. You could have pitched it there, and that would have lifted off. That would have helped your family financially. All your families would be looked after. You're not looking after your parents, your wife as a serial entrepreneur. You're looking after your children, your children's children, because they're successful. You can pass down the wealth. Imagine that. Right. And that for me is scary. Right. And that's why I always say to myself, you have to be on your toes every single day. You have to keep pushing yourself. Even when you say that I've given all, absolutely not true. There's always more to give.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's really inspiring. That's what I needed to hear actually today.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
No worries.
I found that what you just re-quoted from that author that we don't know the name of yet, but when you die, you see the version of yourself that you didn't become or you could have become.
Yes.
And when in our lives do we know, or how can we know when we've become the person that we want to become? Because I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm trying to discuss it with you. But like we were talking about, people change all the time.
Yeah.
So say I'm 25 right now. I might be
Mm-hmm.
a completely different person when I'm 35.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what kind of person I'll be, but at least I'll know I'll change to something else. What if, say, let's take my example. I want to be, let's say, okay, right, an editor, for example, of a magazine,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
big magazine. And I want to achieve that sometime in my life. But when I get to that point, I decide I don't want to be an editor anymore. But then when I get to that point, I'm already, say, late 30s, 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And then I will inevitably, because I know I overthink everything.
Yeah.
I'll say to myself, I don't have enough time left to achieve anything else. Because I'm 40, I might have kids.
But according to who? Who says you don't have enough time?
Myself.
Yes, yeah, and this is your narrative. This is your narrative, right? And there's lots of successful people out there that have started a business or done something different from the age of 40, 50, 60, and so on and so forth. So it's the story that we keep telling ourselves, that I'm 40, I'm too old, or I'm 50, I can't start a new business. I'm 60 now, or 50, I can't have a family, I'm going to be too old. This is what we tell ourselves, and it's a case of, and when we tell ourselves this story, then we limit ourselves. But then you may come across someone who is 40 or 50 who's just start becoming an editor. Sometimes you go to university, right, and you're 18 years old, and you're starting your degree, and you might come across a mature student who, let's say, 40 years old. But that mature student, lots of them, or someone 40 years old, or most of them will probably say, I'm too old to study. So why do we have a 40-year-old mature student here? What story did he or she tell herself? That this is the beginning. I'm still young. I still get education at 43, graduate in 3 years' time, and then start my life. But there's others say, I have kids already. I can't be going back. Or it could be embarrassing to go back. Oh, there are going to be too many kids or whatever. It's what we tell ourselves. There's a quote I'm throwing too many quotes. It's not great that I throw quotes. I don't know the author, but but there's one which I think it's something along the lines of, it goes, those who say he can, those who say he can't, is both usually right. Who said that? I can't remember who said it. But the idea behind that, does that make sense? Or do you want me to break it down?
Can you break it down for me, please? Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So so it's saying that if you say you can, you're right. If you say you can't, you're right. And this is with your mind. So when you say to yourself, I can't be an editor because I'm 40 years old, your brain says you're absolutely right. You can't do that. Let's move on. Yeah. If you say to yourself, I can be an editor, your brain says you're absolutely right. How do we get there? Absolutely different conversation. Then that's why we say, and this is what I talk to my daughter every single time when she talks bad about herself. I say to her, don't say that, because whatever you say, yeah, you're going to believe it. So sometimes she says, I'm not confident. So don't say that. Say I'm confident, and look how she feels. So if you can, and you say you can do it, you can't do it, both right, both right. It's because it's a story you're telling yourself. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes.
That's the way it is. So I'm not sure if I answered your question because I jumped in too early. I got a bit carried away. But again, it's just the narrative that we tell ourselves. That's the key. The narrative that we tell ourselves. And two, who have we been exposed to, right? Meaning network. Who have been around, right? Are we this type of person that's I don't know, that's around other people that where there's, if the other 40-year-olds where they're all settled down, they're not trying anything new. If that's the case, then of course you probably have that mindset that you're not in a position to try anything new, right? It's your wife telling you at that time to say that don't do anything new, it's too risky, right? And she's right, she could be right. But if your wife or you tell yourself that I can be an editor at 40 years old or 50 years old, you're right. There's nothing stopping you except for what you're telling yourself. And this is the beauty behind the mindset coach, that we can, when we talk earlier about this is how we are wired, and this is how we can unwire and then rewire it. Game changer. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, thank you very much for that answer. You didn't stray away. It's fine. You said somewhere before, so going back to identity, you said somewhere before that despite your birth in the UK, and you're growing up here, you said that Vietnam will always be home.
Yes.
Can you unpack this for us, please?
Absolutely.
I'd love to hear it.
Absolutely. Now, if you said it to me 10 years ago, I would say to you, what the hell are you talking about? And that's how crazy that line is for me. So, but identity, yes, I was born here. Yes, I was born here, and I grew up in London. It's very multicultural. At one point, believe it or not, I didn't consider myself a Vietnamese. It just so happens my mum and dad are Vietnamese. I speak basic Vietnamese. It's just very basic. Didn't see myself as a Vietnamese person. I would see myself as just like my other friends, until reality check, someone says something racist, and they're like, okay, I'm a Vietnamese or I'm Asian or whatever, right? But I had no real connection with Vietnam. I went back in 2008 as a holiday with my family to visit my grandmother before she had passed away, and that was the first time I've been there. But that for me wasn't a game changer or anything like that to say I'm Vietnamese. I came back, identity crisis, still the same. Like, who am I? I can't believe yes, I'm Vietnamese, but I don't shout about it. Everywhere I go to the Vietnamese functions, I just speak English, and that's who I am. And that's who I was. But then something happened, and it was what we touched on brief earlier in the introduction, and it's about hitting rock bottom. Hitting rock bottom for me at the time, it was going through depression. And you can see the way I talk. This is the way I am now. Before, in the past, yes, I can be very animated and be very entertaining, but deep down, I'm hiding a lot of emotions, and I'm not the type of person to express that. And that became part of my identity. That's because I was growing up as a teenager in London, in North London. It's quite a rough area. So for you to express yourself is seen as weakness. So a lot of people, what you see is they bottle things up, And it's no surprise that I think there's a charity called Calm, CALM, where there's a charity set up to, I think, to prevent suicide, male suicide from age 18 to 40 or 25 to 40, because a lot of males, they tend to bottle up things up compared to females. Females, generalizing here, they tend to open up more. And sometimes it's a good thing, even gossiping is a good thing to some degree, because you let it out and open. Whereas with men, if you go through a breakup, let's be honest, right? I'm not sure what kind of friends you have Anthony, but with me growing up, if I broke up with my ex, and my guy friends would say, come, let's go out. Let's go out and have a drink. And don't even talk about it. And it's something, sometimes it's so deep, or something happened. And if you show it and say, hey, I don't feel too good about this. Oh, man up. Oh, this is not you. What are you talking about? Come on. So stop messing about, Michael. And you can't express yourself, because you can't express yourself, you bottle it up. And because you bottle it for so long, you think to yourself, holy crap, where do I go from here? And that is deep, because a lot of people have taken their lives because, again, generalizing here, have taken their lives because they couldn't be able to communicate or be open and express their feelings. And for me, I was at that point where rock bottom, didn't know how to express myself, and I held it for years. And one of the things that came to my mind was to commit suicide. And I said to myself, how do I do one last good deed, right? Before I take my life. And I looked back at my childhood and I said, what is it that resonates with me? And it was something about me going to the library and going to the encyclopedia and going to letter V, because I didn't know anything about Vietnam. So I went to V, and lo and behold, Vietnam War came up. And I read a paragraph there about Vietnam War, Agent Orange, and I was horrified by the whole thing. I'm like, holy crap, this is crazy. And then you just move on. But that thing picked up, and I said, let me go to Vietnam and volunteer at an orphanage for 2 weeks, and then let's see what happens. And after that, that for me sounds good, and then I'm gonna call it quits. Flew to Vietnam, didn't know anyone. My family are from the north. I went to south, to Ho Chi Minh City, went to an orphanage where it looks after kids that are suffering from Agent Orange. So they come in there with really large heads, bedridden, just laying there. And it was one of the most heartbreaking things that I've ever experienced, to go in there to see these babies that had no chance in life. And it was almost as if they were waiting for God to call their name. Went to another room which filled with babies, they've been abandoned, for example. Went to another room, children are running around. And it was there where they changed my whole perspective, the way that I looked at life itself. Because before it was more saying, it's me, everyone look at me. I'm this comedian, I'm this entertainer or whatever. But then I said, hang on a second, there's bigger problems out there. It's not just about me, right? And this is where it changed my narrative. And I looked at these kids, and the more time I spent with these kids, the more I felt connected with them. And that for me was a big change. Came back to England, went back to my 9-to-5, and I wasn't driven anymore. And bear in mind, voluntary work, of course, is unpaid. You go back to 9-to-5, your paid job, and you're not driven. Something's not right. So that for me was a big eye opener. Then I tried to create I contacted a lot of different Vietnamese charities and said, hey, I'm going to fundraise and I'm going to give you lots of money to help the kids. But then I kept thinking about it, and I said to myself, how do I know if this money is going to the right people? Are they going to take a cut out of it? And is it something goes to the children? And I felt quite responsible. So 5 months later, I created my own charity called Fundraise For Vietnam. And that's to support the underprivileged children. And that's where we are super transparent. Nobody gets paid whatsoever. The money goes directly to the children to support them. And I've been doing that for 8 years. And for me, going back every single year, now it's creating this bridge between England and Vietnam. And I see myself as a Vietnamese now, a Vietnamese person. So when people here come to me and say to me, are you British or Vietnamese? And I say, I'm Vietnamese. And they said, well, technically you're British. I said, yes, but I'm Vietnamese. I see myself as a Vietnamese person, right? So yes, there's identity crisis at first, but this is who I see myself now. And that's where the Vietnamese identity has come back after 8 years of going back there to sit down with families in orphanages, to spend time with children, very meaningful conversations, right? And to some degree, I almost see the Vietnamese community over there when I help them as my brothers and my sisters, uncles, aunties, not blood related, of course, but that's the way I see them. So it's my duty to go there and help them. And the more I help them, the more, of course, you have this bond with them, but the more closer I feel connected to them. And that for me has helped shape this new identity where I say to people now that I want to retire in Vietnam. I want to retire in Vietnam. I want to be in a position where I can go to a rice field, just ride my bike around, stop, and then jump off and help the elderly. That for me is worth living. So this is what we spoke about earlier about goals in life. This is my real goal. Behind all the values, it's for me to settle down in Vietnam and not think about financial and stuff, but to be there full time and to offer my coaching for free, for example, and also to be able to help villages to eradicate poverty from these villages, to help these elderly, to help kids. That for me is worth living. Whereas in the past, it was all about this depression. I can't express myself, but it's been able to connect with different people that's allowed me to have this different perspective in life. So sometimes it's not a case of, when we talk about open up your mindset, it's not so much about us having a conversation. Sometimes it could be that experience that changes the way that you look at life itself.
You felt connected because there was this thing that was bigger than you that you wanted to be a part of. I think, you know what, after you said that, I was reflecting on my own experience, and I think that's probably why I felt this sort of confusion and a sense of, I would say, a very weak loyalty to both sides, my British side and my Chinese side.
Yeah.
I think it's that's probably what I'm missing in my own life as well, is this ability, so not ability, this opportunity to connect with people back into your heritage culture and to see
Absolutely.
their lives in reality. You know, I've been back to my father's village where he grew up, called Tin. It's like a very small rural-ish village, and I went back to his home where he was growing up, into his bedroom, and my father's uncle showed me around a place where my dad played, and he showed me his bike because my father's uncle owns a bike shop in that village. And we used to go visit him every time we went to Hong Kong. And every time I go there, he'll without fail give me the bike that my father rode on when he was very young, when he was 16. So I visited Hong Kong at that age, and he showed me the bike he was riding on. And you know, I got to see a world and a heritage that I never really experienced here at all. I saw the bigger picture of my family and the context that they grew up in. And then after doing that, because the house he lived in was very, very shabby, really, really shabby. It was nothing like the houses we see in the UK. And then coming back home from that and to here, and when you mentioned what you said about you going to Vietnam to do volunteer work, and then you came home back to a 9-to-5 job, even though you're paid, it still felt wrong, right? Would that be a fair thing to say? I felt the same thing coming back from Hong Kong. It felt like I was being so detached and so severed from my heritage that I felt really sad coming back and very lonely coming back, because, you know, your heritage and everything that your parents went through, they left behind to give you a better life. But then they're trying to give you a better life, and now you feel sad about them giving you a better life because you're so far away. It's this really weird paradox of being bicultural, you know, not exactly half and half, but a complicated relationship between your two sides. But it's very interesting to hear from your perspective. You know, you say to people that you're Vietnamese. I've never come across a bicultural person who sort of expresses themselves outwardly in this way. So you're the first person I've come across to do that, which is very interesting.
Yeah, this is who I am. I just see myself as a Vietnamese person, and I think it's the experiences that I've had. The only time I would say I'm British is the two things I'm British is if I fill in a form that says British, then it's yes, okay, technically yes, you're right. And then when I go to Vietnam and I say, yeah, I was born in England, so I'm British, yes. And then they're, oh my God, it's amazing kind of thing. But they still see me as one of them, which is pretty cool. But I don't really have that identity crisis anymore. This is who I am.
Hmm.
If we touch on racism for 1 second, it always makes me laugh when people say, go back to China. And then I want someone to say that to me to some degree, because I would say, or go back to Vietnam, I would say, just give me 20 more years. I'm working on it. Don't worry. No problem.
I love that answer. I
I've
love it.
got that. Yeah.
I love that answer. That's such a good positive
Yeah.
rebuttal against racism.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Awesome. Um, just to have a few more questions, just to close up the episode.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I wish we can talk even longer, but we have
Yeah.
an approximate time limit. Um, what do you think is sort of in your perspective the hegemony? There's the mindset of society today. Is it that people are more career orientated rather than family orientated these days, or is it something else that you're thinking about?
I would say people in general are more career orientated. When you say family, the things that come to mind is I look at females. I think females have it hard because sometimes females see themselves as if I have started a family now, then theoretically having a year gap, for example, when I look after the kids. Some people do go back after 3 months. And sometimes people, they may see themselves as if I have a kid now, for example, and would other companies see this as a weakness that I have a kid that I can't be in these late meetings or all that kind of stuff? So I think in general, people are more career orientated and career orientated. Yes, they want to do good work for themselves, but also I feel that there is this thing about being very money orientated because the prices here in London, for example, just the living cost is really expensive. So you have to be, I say have to be, it's not the right word. Most people would be career orientated because that's where the money is coming from. But if you said to them, if money wasn't an issue, then would everyone follow this particular career path, or would everyone have a start a family? And I think that's what's key. If you just take everything away from money, then that tells you what the real values are. But in this circumstance now, with the lockdown, where things are tough for everyone, I think everyone has to be, to some degree, career orientated because they need to pay for the mortgage, they need to pay for the bills. Otherwise, where's that money coming from? If they have that single stream of income, for example, if they have multiple, then it's a different story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But and then also the other factor that we haven't discussed, it's more around our beliefs that this is the right way to go about it, to do 9 to 5, to work till when we're 65 and then retire, or I don't know what the age is anymore, but then we retire and then we can see ourselves as a good citizen, or the citizen that has contributed to society or to the country, and that's our good thing of doing about it. And sometimes people might see that as a good thing and say there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. I've worked, I've paid my taxes, I've raised my family on the side, and I'm happy with that. But to me, the way the system's set up, it is very hard to understand because you probably have 10, 15 years left to live. Again, just generalizing. And then what do you do those years? You have money, you have time, but where's the energy? And it is, I wish, the other thing that I wish there would be more in the world is more leaders. More leaders in the world where people could be thought leaders, be very thought-provoking, and be very open to ideas. I would love to have schools to be very open and say that this is our entrepreneurs classes or courses from the very beginning, from primary school, for example. Because when we are when kids themselves are going to school, they're wired in a certain way. This is the way you think and these are the possible career opportunities. You go to secondary school, and then all of a sudden, by the time you're 14, you need to pick your subjects, for example. You go to college, and you're thinking, I don't want to be left out. Let me just follow everyone else. So you're following the norm. You hit 18, 21, then you get a job, and you're saying, okay, I spent all this time, invested this time. Now, what do I do with this? Let me just carry on for the next 4 years, which is absurd. But if we as a society or the government were open to the idea of, let's say that maybe education should be an option, and there should be other ways of going about it. It could be other courses, or how to make money, or how to look after your health, how to raise a family, all that kind of stuff, like the more important stuff. Was some subjects I've studied in school made no sense to me, or not made no sense, but I don't even use it in this day and age. One of them being science. So science is a good example for me. Maybe work for some people or not, but it's not practical, and that's what I would say. So to your question itself, is it more career or is it more family? Definitely career. It's just the way the system has been set up, from school to your friends and family, and to your network, until you meet the right people, until you open up. Because until you open up, because there's always this subset out there that are entrepreneurs or the trailblazers, and you have to meet them or think like them in order for you to be kind of like accepted. It's not like a click or anything like that, but in order for you to contribute to that conversation, and then all of a sudden, anything could happen for you, that you're not thinking about career or family, you're thinking about, how could I build this legacy? That's the right thing for me. And legacy could be defined in different ways for different people.
Absolutely. And just one more point, if you're career orientated, it's more of a let's say more powerful option, because if you have a career, you can have a choice to start a family. But if you're family orientated, the career bit will come a bit harder.
Yes.
So if you go for the career, you can have the option of having both family and a career.
Yeah. Well, I also think that that's a belief that you have,
right.
Because you can also have a family now. It will be harder. Don't get me wrong. That's why I always, when I talk, I always say I'm generalizing, just in case people say, I want to sick Michael. That's a limiting belief. But it's some people, like my brother. He started a family when he was 16, and the thought of him starting a career is like a no-go. It's like, I start my family, I'm not going to do anything else. But like I said before, that quote, if that's what he thinks, he's right. You can't start a career. But there's other people that I know that started a family early, and now they've gone into construction, and they're going to there, and they want to build a company now. I think they're a company of 4 or 5 or so, and they have two, and that person has 2 kids, one of them being 9 years old. So he's starting his own business now, and prior to those 9 years, have no experience. And again, it's more around having that conversation with different people, those go-getters, those trailblazers, that will start you off. Because when you spend time yourself for like the last 9 years, and you're raising your family, you got all these thoughts in your head. You see all your friends and family climb up the corporate ladder, or making a lot of money, or whatever it is. And sometimes you sit there and you look at your kid, no disrespect, and you think, oh man, I missed out. So now it's a case of, okay, how could do you say I missed out on providing, or do you say, how could I, now that my kid's 9 years old, how can I make his or her life a better life by going out there and bringing more income, so that I could pass the wealth down to my kid, so that I'm not waiting for my child to look after me. So the story between my parents, sorry to sidetrack here, the story between my parents is that they came from Hong Kong as well, for 3 years in a refugee camp, and they made their way to England, and they don't have that much money or whatsoever, right? So a part of me, I had this conversation with my parents 2 weeks ago, and I said to her that I'm gonna get this big house, and you're gonna live there with me. And she didn't say anything, and she said to me that there's like a 10-second pause, and I said to me that I didn't know that's how you felt, because sometimes people put people in a care home. I don't want to go care home. So we had that honest conversation with her, and I said, don't worry about that. You have my word. So now she's become my accountability partner, but she's not expecting it. But for me, it's a must, because I want to spend much time with my parents as I can. It's just for as I say that I appreciate them, but also the fact that I don't want to see myself growing up and and then wait for my daughter to look after me. I want to say pass the wealth down. My mum didn't pass any wealth down, but I want to make it clear that she, like you said, Anthony, you touched on it really well, is that they came over here and provided us an opportunity, and you can't put money on that. So that's one way of me saying thank you, but also want to, of course, to my daughter to see this and say, this is the model that we have, right? That's when we get old, that you look after the parents if you can, right? So that's what it is. I have no intentions of I'll put my parents in a care home. If my daughter, I tell my daughter now to this age that don't you dare try to put me in a care home. Honestly, don't you dare, all right? And she's 5 years old. So I'm wiring her early. You see what I'm doing here, Anthony?
Tell them early.
I'm telling them early. I'm wiring her early now that she doesn't even think about that, right? And then I want this. This is how it is. Asian families. I'm sure it's the same with you. That we're well knitted, and I prefer it this way. We have to look after each other. We only have each other.
Absolutely. And when you do something for your family, it's a good way to spur you and keep going, because my parents invested a lot of money into me to get a better education and to experience more with my life. And I feel like if I waste that, if I don't take the opportunities, and if I don't work hard enough, then their investment in me is going to be a really bad investment. They're not going to get any returns on that investment. And I don't want to be a bad investment. So I think I'm in a similar mindset to you.
Yeah.
And being someone from Asian heritage, you want to take what your parents gave you and give them a good return some dividends, to give them a better house to live in with you, a bigger house what you buy in.
Absolutely. We have to take care of our parents. They may not have given us a lot over here when you compare our parents to other parents, right? But they've made some serious sacrifices.
For sure.
And we can't take that away from them, and we can't ignore that. Sorry. Yeah.
Exactly. No, it's a good point. Very good point. And just a philosophical question, just to end.
The
episode. What do you think is the purpose of life, in your opinion?
Oh my God! What is the
in your opinion?
What is the purpose of life? What is the purpose of life? I would say, in short, the short answer is to make an impact on the world. That's the purpose of life. And what I mean by that is it could be defined different from one person to another. So my the way I look at it, when I look at what my purpose is, it's to eradicate poverty in those villages in Vietnam. That's my way. It's to create a legacy. What is your legacy? I always talk about legacy. And sometimes our purpose, when we say legacy, we may not live to see our legacy come to play. We think of Martin Luther King, for example. He doesn't get to see his legacy. You talk about Gandhi, for example. You don't get to see his legacy. So that's my answer to that. A short one on what purpose of life is to make the world better. You come in the world, this is what it is. When you leave it, is it better or not? Or have you made it worse? If you've made it worse, then maybe you never ask yourself that question, what your purpose of life is. Or sometimes it's a case where you never had that conversation with a particular individual that could have steered you differently. We've heard about all these bad apples, where they've maybe had some mentorship, and all of a sudden they turn their life around, and then they say, this is my purpose, to mentor youth at a youth center. And for me, that's absolutely amazing. So I just hope that there aren't bad apples that are listening to this, that they get some guidance and keep exploring, because sometimes we are around the same people every single time, and we don't grow, but we think we are. The only thing that moves or changes is the time that we get older. But we as an individual, or our mindset, it stays exactly the same. And if there's no growth, then there's no change. It is the same with when we talk about metamorphosis, with a butterfly, turning to a caterpillar turns to a butterfly. That's real change. So if someone's ever said to you, Anthony, you've changed, I take that as a compliment. But where I was growing up, in North London, where it's a rough area, when people say you've changed, they say it in a sarcastic way, in a way where that shouldn't happen, that you need to remain real, that this is who you should be, you should act in a certain way. But it's not. We change, just like we change, just like our goals change, just like our tastes change, everything like that. This is part of life, and this is what makes it beautiful. So again, back to the purpose, what your purpose of life is. You may, and of course it links to goals, because one last thing, you may feel that your purpose of life is to I don't know, be a pianist, or to be an editor. That's my purpose of life, to be a great journalist and put some good content out there, and to be the first to inform people. That's my purpose of life, that people wake up and it's all good news, for example, or maybe negative, whatever it is, right? But 10 years down the line, that might completely change. You go, hang on a second, that's not my purpose of life. This is what it is. And this is normal. And it's okay for us to feel like we have this purpose of life, and for that to change. And that could be from our mindset. Again, it could be from experience. It could be from a particular event. Whatever it is, we have to be okay with it and just go along with it, even when it feels so uncomfortable. Yeah.
It just reminds me, when you were starting to talk about legacy, it reminds me, in the spirit of quoting people we don't know the name of, I don't know the name of this source.
But, I love it.
But it brought me to this quote that I read quite recently about, I don't know if you heard of it. When a great person is a person who plants a tree for the next generation to sit under its shade. So you do something, but you don't get the chance to sit under what you've produced. And I think that's a part of what I want to do, is leave a legacy that sort of is bigger than me, and something that will grow, that I won't see grow. I'll see some of it grow in my lifetime, but it will get bigger once I'm gone. Yeah,
it's exactly and that's your legacy there. And it's the idea behind that is to be very clear with it, because time is not working for us. It's more working against us to some degree. And it's being very clear with that as early as possible. Like, what is my legacy? If I don't know what my legacy is, then what is it that I like to do? What is it like to be remembered for? And we'll keep working towards that. And the more you ask yourself these questions, the more clear it becomes. And again, I'll talk about proximity. Proximity is key. Be around people who know what the legacy is. Be around people who know where they want to go in life, because that rubs off on you and think, hang on a second, that makes sense. Or I'm thinking of this, and be very open to have that dialogue with people, because you never know what kind of conversation that can come out of it. But I do like the idea of, plant a tree now. You may not be able to benefit from it or reap from it, but your children will. Maybe I think that's more around the shade bit. I think maybe that's the idea behind that, planting a tree, for example. It's the same. And what is it that you're going to do now that your children will benefit from it, from your legacy, and your grandchildren, and your great grandchildren, and so on and so forth. That is a beautiful legacy for me, to say that it started from Anthony. When Anthony came here, he done X, Y, Z, and now we are living off this to some degree. That's amazing. If you can pass that knowledge, pass that wealth down to them, and imagine this, right? Imagine that you're working 9 to 5 throughout your whole life, and you created the legacy, you planted the seed, right? And you got all this wealth that's been passed down. They can pass down the wealth to their family, and so on and so forth. But more importantly, because they're not thinking about the money, but you pass the knowledge down to them, the way that you think, the mindset, all of a sudden they're not sitting on a holiday every single year, but they're thinking about, how could I create a legacy now? How could I, without having this barrier or something that's holding me back from this 9 to 5, I'm financially free, for example, and now I can go out there. Now I can go back to Hong Kong or China and do X, Y, Z. I'll go back to the village, to my grandparents' village, and make a difference there. Maybe that's my legacy. I don't know what it is, but the thought of that really excites me. But it's hard work. It's hard work, because these are just ideas. but we have to be crystal clear with it. We have to work towards that. And it's not going to be an easy ride, because there's sometimes in the day where we say, that legacy, I don't know, let me watch Netflix instead. That's my legacy today. But that's the honest truth. And it's easy for us to drop off, because this is an idea or a seed that we're planting within our mind, and no one's really benefiting from it right now. So it's very hard for us to bring that to life. So that's why we have to, well, come back again, Anthony, is super discipline comes in. Once that comes into place, that self-discipline, you know why you want it. Why do I want a legacy? Is a legacy important? Always nice to have for my kids to have this tree that's been planted. Always a must, so that they can make the world a better place, or whatever it means to you. Then yeah, and the rest is history.
Absolutely. Just another point what you just said about was really interesting. You know, passing down to your children and their grandchildren and their great grandchildren. You know, if you teach your kids well in this mindset, in this, you know, this disciplined mindset of trying to pass down a legacy, and if each generation does that, because you could probably argue that your legacy, if you teach your children well, you pass down your legacy, your children are going to reinvest it even widely, and they're going to create your legacy, expand your legacy even wider than ever you imagined.
Absolutely, and that for me is spot on. So I know I talk about money a lot on this call, but it's also about the mindset. It's all about passing things down and not thinking about too much about possessions. It's not about saying, you know, let's give the kids things I never had, i.e. toys and PlayStations, all that kind of stuff. It's not really about that. When I talk about wealth, I'm talking about wealth where they can not think about going to work and doing things that could impact the world. The other thing that we spoke about is the mindset. This is because I had a really fixed mindset. So now I have this growth mindset. Hence the reason when I talk to my 5-year-old daughter, I talk to her sometimes as an adult. I talk to her about procrastination, about being proactive. You're being reactive. She understands the difference, the importance of it, about the importance of being on time. And I was never ever taught this. But as I go through experience, it's my duty to pass it down. So that's because we talk about wiring a child up to 8 years old, or 8 years old. Once they understand that, when she grows up, there's going to should be theoretically be no procrastination. She's on it every single time. So I'm setting her up so that when she becomes an adult and she gets married, has a family, she will pass that on and say, I've never procrastinated. I'm going to teach my children the same thing. They're going to be go-getters. This is how we operate. And they become much more productive, much more efficient, and they have much more a better idea of what they want and just getting what they want in life. Whereas for us, for me, it was never that. It was just follow the system and having this fixed mindset. This is do this, do that. My mom telling me, you know, it's just work hard. It's very hard to get money. And I believe at one point I believed in that. But now I'm telling my daughter, you can do whatever you want in life. If you just put your mind to it, it's a whole different conversation now. And she's getting this at a very early stage. And I don't think, it's not me bragging that, it's just being a podcast to say that your kids are never ever too young to learn to understand this. Don't underestimate it because they're a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old or they're playing Roblox or whatever. They are there to condition to learn. They absorb much more better than adults. And that's how it works. So have that conversation with them. But in order for you to have the conversation with them, you have to believe it in yourself and you have to act on it. So they have to see it, to see how you walk, how you operate, in order for them to take you seriously and say, okay, this is the way I'm doing it. So when I'm in the house, I do my chores and my daughter sees that. And I want my daughter to look at me and say, okay, I'm just used to it. This is a norm that a guy is doing the chores, everything like that. It's not a woman's job. I know I come back to the old school there. Or my dad picks me up, what kind of stuff. One thing that really annoyed me, I might go off sidetrack here, is one of the kids said to my daughter that, why doesn't your dad pick you up? Or your parents pick you up? And that really annoyed me. And I didn't want her to be left out. So now I take time out to pick my daughter up, to say that I'm going to be there for you. But in return, I want her to do the same. It doesn't matter how busy she is when she becomes an adult and a family. I want her to do the same. And this is more about having just being a good example. If you speak about it, be it, express it. So yeah, so I want to share that with you.
Thank you very much. A powerful ending for this show. Well, Michael, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your time.